Okay, so we're going to go through the workbooks on lesson 20 since there is not a checkpoint. So we'll just start with question 1. A woman who is 5 feet tall is standing in the park and notices that her shadow, CB, measures 7 feet. At the same time, she notices that the tree next to her, DE, casts a shadow that measures 14 feet, FE. How tall is the tree? So if you notice in this diagram that they are saying her shadow, she's 5 feet tall, so segment AB is representing the woman, and that is corresponding side is the height of the tree, so segment DE, and then her shadow is CB, which is 7, and the shadow of the tree is FE, which is the corresponding side, which is 14. So now they want to know how tall is the tree. So since DE is representing the tree, I'm going to just represent it by X, and I'm going to set up our ratio for corresponding sides, comparing corresponding sides in similar triangles. So we have I'm going to start with DE. Corresponding, the ratio of DE compared to its corresponding side, which is AB, is going to equal the same ratio as the length of the shadow of the tree, FE, to the length of the shadow of the woman, CB. So by substitution, I'm going to leave the length of DE. We don't know that measurement. And the length of AB is 5. So this ratio is going to equal the length of FE is 14 divided by the length of CB, which is 7. So now if I look at this, I did use X to represent DE. So I will just substitute that in as X. Now if you look at this, 14 divided by 7 is a number. It's just a fraction. And so in order to solve for X, I can multiply both sides. Since we're dividing by 5, I can multiply by 5 for both sides. Now 5 times X over 5 is 5X divided by 5 is equal to 14 divided by 7 times 5. Since those are all numbers, I'm going to type that in my calculator right now as parentheses. 14 divided by 7, parentheses, or I'll pull it up in Google to show you. So we have parentheses, 14 divided by 7, close parentheses, times by 5. And that is 10. So we have, that is 10. So 5X divided by 5. 5 divided by 5 is the form of 1, which I can reduce down to. So I have 1X equals 10. Well, I'm remembering that X was represented by DE, and so the length of DE is 10 feet. So the top tree is 10 feet tall. Question 2. Becky is standing at point B. She is 5 feet 3 inches tall, and her height is represented by segment AB. At a certain point in the day, Becky casts a 6-foot shadow, represented by segment CB. At the same time, a signpost located at point E casts an 18-foot shadow, represented by segment FE. How tall is the signpost? Its segment DE represents the height of the post. Alright, now, since her height is mixing the units of feet and inches, we need to have them either be all in inches or all in feet. And since the other information, the shadow length and the shadow length of the sign, is both given in feet, I would like to keep it in feet. So I need to know, how do I convert inches to feet? So if I have 3 inches, how can I convert that into feet? And I know that there is 1 foot, 1 inch for every, sorry, there is 12 inches for every 1 foot. So I'm going to set this up as a proportion just to show you why. So we have 3 inches is going to be compared to how many feet? Just like 12 inches is compared to 1 foot. Now, since my unknown is in the denominator, I'm going to use the reciprocals so that the unknown is in the numerator. So I can also rewrite it as an unknown amount of feet divided by 3 inches is going to equal the same proportion as 1 foot is to 12 inches. So if you notice, since I have 1 divided by 12, those are just numbers. And I have an unknown divided by 3. So in order to move 3 to the other side, I'm going to multiply by 3 to both sides. So I have 3, and instead of using a 3, well, okay. So 3 times an unknown divided by 3. Remember in our last example that 5 divided by 5 is a form of 1. Well, 3 divided by 3 is also a form of 1. So I'm left with an unknown amount of feet is equal to 1 divided by 12 times 3. So we have in your Google calculator, we would type in parentheses 1 divided by 12 times 3. That's 0.25. So 3 inches is equal to 0.25 feet. So we have 0.25 feet for 3 inches. Now she is 5 foot 3 inches, so she is 5.25 feet tall. Now, some of you are saying that's a lot of algebra to figure out that she was 0.25 or a quarter of a foot. You could also, those of you who are really familiar with tape measures, are probably thinking, well, 3 is a quarter of 12, and since she is 3 inches tall, that means it's a quarter of a foot. So she has 5 feet and 5.25 feet tall. So she's 5.25 feet. And then, so we need to make sure that we are in all of the same units. That's how you would get 3 inches into feet. So then, now let's set up our ratios. DE is our unknown. So we have DE is going to be compared to its corresponding side. That proportion, which was 5.25, is going to equal the shadow length of the signpost, which was 18, is going to be compared to its corresponding side, or the length of her shadow, which is 6. Now, 18 divided by 6 is a number. It's a fraction. And DE is our unknown, times it by 0.525. And instead of using DE, I could use X if I wanted to. It's just representing some unknown. So X divided by 5.25 is equal to 18 divided by 6. And again, since it's in the denominator, we're going to use our multiplication property and multiply it to both sides. 5.25. Now 5.25 times X divided by 5.25, 5.25X divided by 5.25. And 18 divided by 6 is times 5.25 is a number, and I'm going to use my calculator to do it. So parentheses 18 divided by 6, parentheses, times 5.25, 15.75. So then 5.25 divided by 5.25 is 1. Form of 1, so then we have 1x equals 15.75, or I could write it as x equals 15.75, since the 1 is implied in that. So now it's asking, the signpost is blank feet, blank inches tall. Well, now I have 0.75, and I better remember that that's 0.75 of a foot. So we've got to convert the 0.75 back to inches. So if we remember that 12 inches is to 1 foot, as some unknown inches is to 0.75 feet. So then again, if you notice, it's set up exactly like the proportion we just solved. So then we're going to multiply both sides using our multiplication property by 0.75. 0.75 times x divided by 0.75 is 0.75x divided by 0.75x is equal to, and 12 divided by 1 times 0.75. 12 divided by 1 is just 12. So if you didn't recognize that, that's okay. Just type in 12 divided by 1, close parentheses, times 0.75, which is 9. And this is inches. And the reason why it's only inches is because right up here we have a foot over a foot. And then that would be a form of 1. So we can actually write this as 15 feet, 9 inches. Now you could have also thought back and said, okay, well, 0.25 was 3 inches, and I know that 0.75 is made up of, is 3/4, and 0.25 is 1/4. So you could have thought, okay, well, 1/4 is 3 inches, so 3/4 would have to be 3 times 3 inches, or 9 inches. So 15, 9. And question 3 is really similar to question 2, so we're going to skip that, and we're going to go to question 4. Well, the lakefront cottage that is 30 feet high casts a shadow on the water. How long is that shadow if a 16-foot high truck parked nearby casts an 8-foot shadow? So how do I draw my diagrams so that I know I have my corresponding sides? And do I have to have my diagrams? So 1, how do I draw my diagrams? Well, we have a cottage, and I know it looks like a house, and it casts a shadow on this water. So there's our diagram for the cottage, and the cottage is 30 feet high, and I don't know what the length of its shadow is, but a 16-foot high truck that is parked nearby casts an 8-foot shadow. So that's how you would set up your diagrams. And if you didn't want to set up your diagram, you could remember that shadow length, that your ratios is going to be the height of the cottage, so 30 feet, is going to be so height will be compared to height. So in my notes I would write height of object 1 is going to be compared to the height of object 2, and the shadow of object 1 is going to be compared to the shadow length of object 2. So that's what I would write in my notes if I didn't want to draw the diagram. So the height of object 1, I'm going to let the cottage be my object 1, and I'm going to let the truck be my object 2. So the height of the cottage is 30 feet high, and the height of the truck is 16. That proportion is going to be equal to the length of the shadow of the cottage, which I don't know, so I'm going to use S, and the length compared to the length of my shadow for my truck, which is 8. So again, since 30 divided by 16 is a number, I can leave it like that, and I have S divided by 8, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 8. So I have 8 times 30 divided by 16. So since all of those are numbers, there's not a variable in it, I can do 8 times parentheses 30 divided by 16 close parentheses, which gives me 15. So 15 feet is going to equal S divided by 8 times 8 is 8S divided by 8. 8 divided by 8 is a form of 1. So then I would be left with 1S, or just S, is equal to 15 feet. And so the S was representing the shadow that cottage cast. So it casts a 15-foot shadow. And now question 5 is very similar to question 2. And just remember to convert the 6 inches to feet. So we're going to jump to one that listed out as a ratio. So we're going to jump to question 10. On a set of blueprints for a new home, the contractor has established a scale of 0.5 inches to 10 feet. what is the actual height of the living room if its height is 8/20 of an inch on the blueprint. So we're going to do a similar setup. So we have 0.5 inches on the blueprint is proportional to 10 feet in line. So then that means that we have 8/20 on the blueprint, and I want to know how many feet that is in real life. Since my unknown is on my denominator, I'm going to use the reciprocals. So I'm going to actually set it up so it's 10 feet to 0.5 inches is equal to x divided by 8/20. Since 10 divided by 0.5 is only numbers, there's not a variable on this side, and there's one on this side. So since I'm divided by 8 divided by 20, I'm going to multiply by 8/20 to both sides. So I can have a form of 8/20. So x divided by 8/20 times 8/20 is going to give us 8/20 x divided by 8/20. Now 8/20 divided by 8/20 is a form of 1. So then I'm just left with 1x. 1x is going to equal 8/20 times 10 divided by 0.5. I can type that into my calculator. So parentheses 8 divided by 20, close parentheses, times parentheses 10 divided by 0.5. That's going to equal 8. So the actual height of the living room is 8 feet. And your last tip from the Little Book of Calm is going to be learn 2 Tai Chi exercises. It is almost impossible to feel tense when you're concentrating on Tai Chi routine. Learn the basic Tai Chi exercises and you have a secret to becoming calm. So there's your tip from